PEO advisors.
All right, you're getting ready to go live. We got
This
Kelly
station,
and Big
its
C today.
management,
Stay
or other
tuned.
hosts
We're going through the
will
resume close. Check this out, Ralph.
Attention agents and business owners. Can you make heads or tails of workers' compensation? Very few people can. Listen to the pros, making agents and business owners smarter every Wednesday on Everything PEO.
Hello, 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 Tampa Bay listeners and beyond. You've got Everything PEO on Money Talk 1010 AM. I'm Evan Collard. I want to thank you for listening today. A rainy afternoon in Tampa Bay, Florida. It sounds like a wonderful day for a radio show. You know, I listen to that intro every week. Listen to the pros. We use that term very loosely in here. But we do have an awesome show for you. Kelly Anderson, co-founder of Florida Resource Management, in studio today, returning guest and contributor on the show. Kelly, thanks for coming in, my man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, normally this is an educational show, Everything PEO. I think the name's very fitting. We're kind of switching it up today for kind of the sales reps and the insurance agents, the PEO reps. Really, this resume close works for anybody. We're going to get into that in the second segment. I think a lot of industries, this has a parallel. Of course, it's going to be, PEO specific, if you will, today. But pretty excited to get into that. Money Talk 1010 AM, Everything PEO. We're brought to you by Enterprise HR, one of the nation's premier and longest running privately owned PEOs in the country. And we actually had Tim Russell in studio last week. It was same thing, returning guest, Tim and you really have kind of been there from the beginning for the show. It's awesome to have you. It's really both of you kind of pioneers, if you will, in the industry. Been 20 plus years playing this game. And so I'd like to hear kind of the idiosyncrasies, if you will, on outlooks and things like that. So over the last couple weeks, we've had some solid guests. 2 weeks ago, we had Meredith Burns and Chris Sullivan of Sons Insurance in the studio, and really had a big emphasis on risk management, loss control, and really the critical role this plays in workers' comp. And I always love to get kind of your take. I know when you came in before the summer break, Kelly, that was really a big emphasis of our show. I tripped over an article today, and it was changes to the upcoming workers' compensation laws in Florida for first-time violators. So in the most recent legislative session, lawmakers made some changes to workers' comp laws, and really it's a significant reduction to the penalties issued to first-time violators. It provides up to a 15% reduction to the penalty for any first-time violators when issuing a stop work order. And so for any listeners out there not familiar with the stop work order, Florida is one of the few states out there that has workers' comp inspectors literally combing job sites, walking into businesses to make sure you're compliant with workers' comp. In the state of Florida, if you're a white-collar business, you don't have to buy it until you have 4 W-2 employees. But if you're a blue-collar construction company, just 1 employee, you have to carry this insurance. But the legislature revised the audit period as well. So not only did they reduce the penalty, they're giving you more time to produce the business records. Now, for an employer that has not previously been issued a stop work order and has a penalty, there was already a 25% discount. So now it's 25% plus this additional 15% discount, as long as they can produce all the records within 21 days. Of course, they go back looking at payroll records. Did you have comp? Didn't you? How much payroll you ran? That's the standard formula for determining a workers' comp premium. Your payroll times your workers' comp rate equals your premium. And it's important to note that as of January of 2023, any stop work order issued, and it was successfully, basically the 25% was going to go away. Now this legislation is allowing it to stay. Okay, Kelly, I think we're setting a nasty precedence here, right? Workers' comp is literally down 80% in the last 19 years. We're scheduled to have a 15% reduction last year. Now, in my opinion, that says workers' comp's never been more affordable. Right. I think they're doing that to promote less cheating for business owners. What's your take on this?
Well, unfortunately, as much as that article might sound like it has some teeth in it, I think from years past, my ability to talk to the law enforcement side as they're investigating the claim or as they're investigating the person doing the infraction, the company, if you will, I'm finding that sometimes, depending upon what law enforcement individual you're talking to, on the particular infraction, there's leniencies that I'm able to pick up on. that they're not as finite as the law reads. It seems like the interpretation of the law enforcement and their ability to extract the data necessary to either minimize the penalty and or forgive the penalty in some cases. And I think a lot of that is how quick is the employer on his feet? What can he or she do when they have been caught in violation, and how can they correct the infraction? And that inconsistency, I feel, really kind of detracts from that article in a whole. I don't think that there's much there, because my experience is there's been leniences from case to case. They're not as firm and precise from violation to violation.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair. The reality is, at PEO Advisors, we deal with this quite a bit, right? We have insurance agents bringing us accounts all the time that are on a stop work order, trying to get off a stop work order, and the navigation of that landscape, what that really looks like. Some of these inspectors really take their power, if you will, over the top, and it's to the book, and we're not releasing it until every certificates are issued, payroll records have been reviewed, et cetera, et cetera. And others are really like, hey, get me a certificate, I'll get them back on the job today, I'll do their audit in the next 3 weeks. It's fine. I feel so terrible that they're in this position. Oh my goodness. And sometimes I think the inspectors are almost naive.
Yeah, as much as they might be naive, I think oftentimes because they have a badge, and in some cases they have a weapon. That maybe there's some ego that goes along with that, and if you push the ego, they respond in kind, and I think that's part of it. I think it's if you address law enforcement in a polite way, in a professional way, I think you get. If there is a pass to be given, I think the pass is granted to you. If you're that employer that says you're not going to talk to me that way, you're not going to do this to me, you can't do that to me, then I think here comes the hammer.
Yeah. I think the hammer needs to be there. I really do. We're one of the few states that still has workers' comp exemptions. I just heard this today. We have a newer sales rep. His name's Justin, just came on board a couple weeks ago. He's dialing for dollars. It's bringing me back to my roots. It's been a long time. A lot of our seasoned sales reps just aren't in those paths anymore. So it's fun kind of getting back to it. As my old co-host Lionel would say, I love dialing for dollars. You go 7 doors to the left and 7 doors to the right, and you go make magic. But he came across a towing account today that said, well, I don't have 4 employees. I don't need to carry it. And although technically he's not a blue-collar construction company, I would call a towing operation very blue-collar.
100%.
So I had to look it up today before coming on the show, the statute myself. And yes, technically, a towing account does fall in the once you have your 4th W-2, you have to carry it. But my counter to that is if you have a type of work where you have people driving on the road daily and all hours through the night, where you can have an accident that has nothing to do with negligence, risk management, control, just simple bad luck, a T-bone at a red light will get you there.
Yeah,
it's amazing to me that the towing account would fall on this side of a white collar business and when the mandate to buy is. So I just feel like if they're not going to be prudent in getting workers' comp when they should, clearly risk management and loss control flies out the window.
Yeah. Well, the oddity of that whole thing is Department of Transportation will put extreme regulations on the wear and tear of a vehicle and how it's operating and its ability to pass benchmarks to be on the road. And yet you can be a driver and get into an accident and there's no help. There's no nothing.
Sure.
So, from that perspective, it seems a little lopsided and doesn't seem like we're paying attention to the liability that needs to be paid attention to.
Yeah. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit. We spent some time last week talking about how the 15% rate reduction that's proposed for next year is actually hurting business owners. Okay. I think the everyday business owner hears that reduction's coming and they champion the fact that their premiums may be going lower and how great that feels. And oh my gosh, the bottom line is now improved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not looking, any foreshadowing, if you will, that now the market may be getting tougher. Carriers are going to leave the state. It's harder to get coverage now, harder to get a policy. What's your take on this? 78%. The rates are down 78% over the last 20 years. And every industry has this, right? Credit is, lending is too easy, then it's too hard. Industry too high, too low. Everyone knows that pendulum in every industry swings, right to left. But 20 years in the business, I've literally seen a rate reduction. I've only seen the rates go up 2 times, and both of them were single-digit increases. Mm-hmm. It's just gone far beyond everyone's belief as far as when the market would finally turn. But I'd love to get your take on this.
Yeah, so unfortunate the business owner doesn't realize it's a huge problem. It's a growing problem. It's a problem that is about insurability. Pretty soon carriers are not going to want to take the normal and customary risks that they would, because let's face it, workers' compensation is a business. It's for-profit business, and insurance companies need to be profitable. And unfortunately, as these rates in NCCI states are reduced, the insurance companies can't make the money necessary to keep their statutory compliance. It's not about just making money and being profitable. They have reinsurance they have to pay for, they have treaties they have to pay for, and those are substantial. And they're not just collecting money and keeping it in the bank. They're putting in reserve allocations for huge losses. And so if they can't collect that premium, they're putting themselves in a detriment for insurability. And so, pulling out of a state or not wanting to write certain risks anymore is going to be more of the norm. You're going to find carriers that are going to hold the pen, and they're going to underwrite to extreme, and they're going to put consent to rates on stuff. Consent to rate in a monoline policy is going to be the norm. So those business owners that think, well, yay, I have a $5 code that's going to go to $4. No, it's probably going to go to $5.50.
Sure.
And so you're protected in the PEO space to some degree because we write such large portfolios and we can protect that consent to rate. But if you're on your own, consent to rates are coming.
And we've only got about 2 minutes before our break. Don't you think it's gone well beyond the logic of profitability anymore? And I know this is a hard conversation, right? First of all, we're insuring injuries. That conversation in itself is really tough to talk about with a lot of business owners. But to take that to another level, that they want their carrier to be profitable, I don't think anyone really cares if they have their car insurance with Progressive, what's Progressive's profitability margins are this year. But without a healthy carrier, you may not have sustainable coverage. So, of course, those two must come hand in hand. But, roofing literally has gone from 60% to this year's renewal, it'll be under 10%. Even the towing industry, like we were just talking about, when I got in the business 20 years ago, it was 29%. This year, it's going to be under 5%. And with the attorney caps getting lifted a couple of years ago and the indemnity benefits getting stretched out from 2 to 5 years, that's the wage reimbursement portion of the claim. We've gone so far beyond how is this profitable for the carriers anymore. We got about a minute and a half before break. How have they sustained this, Kelly?
Well, I think they just increased the underwriting. If you remember years and years ago, if you had any kind of premium in the game for an account, let's just say 10, 15,000, that was usually made up between 3 to 5 people. Now to get a 10 to 15,000 premium account, you got 25 enrolled. Mm-hmm. So the frequency or the severity coupled with the frequency with less employment pool might be a justification on why insurance companies can manage that, or how they can get in with less amount of people, insuring less amount of people with a reduced premium. That could be why their actuarial people in the business are maybe okay with these extreme adjustments to reduction. Maybe. And that would, I'd love to have that conversation, to have an actuarial guy here to say, here's how we're pulling it off. Here's how we're doing it.
Yeah, fair.
Interesting.
It's funny you say, when I got in the business 20 years ago, almost every account started with a 10 or a 15% discount. I don't care if you're a 3-man or 10% discount. We had, I have some sales reps that have been with me, a few years, and we go to discount an account. You can do that? They had literally worked with me for multiple years without having a discount applied to one account. So the landscape has certainly changed. Well, we've got lots more coming back with Kelly after the break. We're going to get into the resume close, which is really just a set of value propositions for the PEO space. Stick around, check it out. We'll be right back. All right. We are back. Thanks for sticking around through break. All right. You're back with Everything PEO on Money Talk 1010 AM, brought to you by Enterprise HR, one of the nation's premier and longest running privately owned PEOs in the country. Kelly, it's been long awaited. I teased it on the marketing lead ups this week. I got a couple messages, couple DMs, resume close. I think it's really on the tip of everyone's tongue. And like I teased before break, it's really a set and series of value propositions for the PEOs. And I feel like that's the number one feedback this show gets. Believe it or not, we did, 50 something weeks straight. We took the summer off. Now we're, several weeks back into the show. And the number one talk about what PEOs are on a basic level, from what does PEO even stand for? Professional Employer Organization, right? I hear that the most. And a lot of times these are folks that I'm working with, but yet they still want to get their arms around it almost on an elementary level. So I thought the resume close and kind of going through this segment would be a neat way to do so.
Yeah, well, as we're calling it the resume close, because from its origin, that's what it was taught to me as, but it really does speak to a very salesy thing. And I think the PEO has evolved. I don't think PEOs are really the sales engine that they used to be. I think we're more consultants. I think we get in there and we talk to business owners about, many things, not just selling our product, but what is the pains within your organization. And I think we become a respirator of help and aid to our clients and our prospects. And so that resume close speaks to a very salesy kind of language, and I don't want it to be like that. I don't want to take away from the spirit of what PEO representatives do. They consult, they listen, they pay attention, and they try to come up with solutions with or without them becoming a client. Most PEO consultants are there to help, even if you don't secure a contract with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, but I will say this though, maybe we're a little spoiled here in the Florida market, with it being the mecca of PEOs, if you will. Almost every business owner in this state, at least, has heard of this. But as I bleed into Georgia and even some of the Gulf Coast states, we have one of our reps, Daniel Lovett, who's hitting the Alabama market. It gets very much back into selling the concept. And so I think this is fitting for a lot of listeners out there. The show's reach, obviously we're on terrestrial radio, we're in the Tampa Bay area, but good old LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, which check out our new YouTube channel. Good time to plug that. We've been putting a lot of love into that channel. We got shorts on there, live feeds, clips, Anyhow, luckily the internet takes it a lot of places. I had a guy from New York today ask me if he'd come on the show. So, but the further you get away from Florida, the more you've got to kind of, pitch this product, if you will.
For sure.
So lay it on me, my man.
Well, it's just quite simple. Assuming you're a business owner, Evan, and you gave me the time to talk to you, I would just simply ask you, Evan, I'd like to come work for you. Before I do, I'd like to give you my resume. I am a payroll manager. I specialize in all things payroll. I'm a tax manager specializing in all things payroll taxes. I'm an insurance agent specializing in workers' compensation. I'm an HR manager and specialist specializing in all things employment. I'm a safety manager securing all elements of safety and compliance. I'm a health insurance agent that fights and secures the best rates that they're offered today. And I can do that all for X amount of dollars a week. Would you hire me? That's the idea. Would you hire me if I could build this resume and show that I could be all things to your organization? Would you hire me? And how much is that worth? And if you can leave a client with that on what this is worth to them and break it down, then I think it's not about money. It's about getting those services and being a part of that. And that's almost the resume.
The ultimate value proposition, right?
It's true.
And not to one up your resume close, but I think a huge component to that is claims management on both the unemployment claims and the workers' comp claims, right? Because I say it on the show a lot. That's probably the biggest value prop never spoke about in this space. So, you're throwing a lot of things out there, and geez, to put a dollar amount on something like this, I don't even know if I could. If I sit here and go down my sheet on what I'm paying my CPA, my agent, payroll provider, I mean, you could be talking tens of thousands of dollars.
Sure, even on a part-time level, I think there's an argument for a client like you, Evan, that would say, well, geez, Kelly, I don't need a full-time tax manager. I don't need a full-time insurance agent. I don't need a full-time HR specialist. I don't need a full-time health agent. I don't need those in a full-time capacity. Even if you were to break those down to part-time influences, still on a part-time influence, my guess would be tens of thousands of dollars a year.
I think it's
no
fair.
problem.
All right. Well, you threw a lot at me there. I'm a business owner in this example. You've piqued my interest. Payroll manager. Give me a little bit on that.
So as it relates to payroll managing, it's not just about keystroking the hours, right? There's a lot that goes on to the payroll that business owners don't realize. They see commercials on the TV, Intuit, you can do your payroll middle of the night and click a couple numbers and then
You're good.
There's your magic payroll and you can see it on your spreadsheet. And but really, as it relates to identifying the correct way to do payroll is to set it up the first time, the right time. So when it comes time to W-4s and W-2s and issuance to taxes, all those things are compliant. And that's why I believe it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
Those business owners that have 10 or 15 employees that are doing this at 11 and 12 o'clock at night, I think, it is probably not the best use of their time, A. B, they probably might be thinking about all the things that they need to be compliant with. And so I think in every PEO case are PEOs out there that are using software that makes us compliant. And it's hard for us to make mistakes because we are regulated, and if we do make those mistakes, we have to fix them very quick.
It's surprising to me, in 2023, with the internet, everyone's got a computer in their hand. We still get folks that say, well, listen, I'm just going to pay 50 hours. I do straight time with my employees. I've had them agree with that, right? Of course, federal law says anything over 40 is time and a half. Going back to the towing, company example, I can't tell you, at one point we had over 100 towing accounts. And I want to say at one point, maybe 20% of them were in wage and hour disputes.
Yep.
So I can get the compliance component in a big, big way. Tax manager. I think this one's probably pretty self-explanatory, right?
It is. W-2 and W-4 compliance all speaks to tax, right? And so our ability to make sure that we are allocating the right taxes regarding wage and hour and regarding the disbursement of those taxes is key. And so in most cases, PEOs are the size of the PEO dictates how quickly we have to pay those taxes. So rest assured, Evan, if you were my client, you're not waiting for me to pay those taxes because we're sizable enough to have to pay it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Where you, maybe as the business owner, might be on a monthly or biannually.
Yeah, heck, probably biannually, right?
Right.
I think what is 100,000 in FICA collected, You've got to make that payment. Some of these accounts may be annually, right?
Yeah.
And then it feels like it's there. It feels like it might be yours.
Right.
Don't put the hand in the cookie jar.
Right.
But that limited liability shift, right? Another huge value prop to PEOs. This and even from using third-party payroll providers, I say it all the time. And I mean, no offense to the Paychexes and the ADPs of the world, but it's like hiring your brother-in-law or your sister-in-law to do your payroll. They do it for a fee, and if it's not done right, oops. Whereas with the PEO, the liability all falls on their shoulders. I think the tax manager component's a big one. What about insurance agent?
Yeah, so insurance agent, typically, I think they're fine individuals. They're incredible professionals. They know how to assess risk. They know how to underwrite a certain product, but it really kind of stops there. And I think the PEO representation of an agent is a lot deeper in the way that a business owner maybe on the surface can't put value on, but in a long-term commitment, they can certainly see what PEOs can do by making insurance affordable each and every year if you were to have frequency or severity, by making sure that the PEO is mitigating all expenses, reducing reserve allocations. Most agents don't have the authority to do that. They can't go to the carrier level and say, hey, you reserved $50,000 for that broken ankle. Don't you think that's too much? Like, there's no authority there typically. And PEOs have a little strength in that relationship where they can, in a claims review environment, be able to make sure that the reserves come off when they're supposed to come off. And, that is the ability to maintain the cost of insurance. Because as you know, Evan, this is the PEO's cost.
Sure.
And so as we're fighting on behalf of our clients, we are helping ourselves as well. And so that dual interest, I think, is a lot stronger than your typical agent would be in the street.
Yeah. We looked at a set of loss runs today, and that's really a printout of your claim history during your time with the carrier. I think it was Aaron, executive producer of the show, had brought this one in today. But literally, they had reserves still open on their loss runs from a claim 3 years old, where someone's been back to work for 18 months now. And I think it's one of those, every time they go to that follow-up visit, they never say they're 100% clear. Every once in a while, I got a backache still. And 3 years later, they're still battling to get this reserve off. When the payouts haven't changed in months.
Right.
Yeah, it can really, really bog you down from your buying power of competitive insurance.
The argument to that, though, I think, Evan, is sometimes customers will say, well, Kelly, that's your PEO cost, or that's your insurance cost. That's not really ours. And so how that's not true is because when and if that client were to ever leave us, the promulgation can happen.
I do that every time.
Yeah, sorry. It can happen if that merit or that claims history can follow the claim or can follow the insured. And so oftentimes they don't realize that. They don't realize, they just think, well, that's really your problem.
Yeah. Co-employment, right? Co-employment.
That's right.
Not employer of record,
That's
not
right.
EOR. Now, I understand at the state level, yes, but I like how this is still individualized insurance to that capacity.
Yep.
And if and when you kick the can and go down the road, it will follow you.
Yep.
It takes a certain amount of education level on the front end of providing the coverage and the service. I really think, Kelly, it's just an overall naiveness. I think a lot of business owners don't realize that first aid is included. It's something they can do, whether they call that $500 or the first $1,000, every eye washout, finger poke, palm front under a nail. I don't think they realize how much that can haunt them from a frequency of claim level down the road, especially if they try and go back to a monoline policy in the standard market. I don't think enough agents really harp on that enough. Yep. Understand what this is.
Yep.
This is your history to develop. And if you want to have that mindset, just understand it could make things tougher for you later.
It sure can. And, underwriters, I think in the future, are going to underwrite. They're going to underwrite business owners not just for merit. They're going to underwrite them based on what is their philosophies of underwriting. I bet you PEOs today are going to be putting more of underwriting the culture of the business, not just their claims. They're going to want to know what is your appetite for the process of claims. And I think that's going to be a big deal.
I think they're going to have to. Well, you're listening to Everything PEO on Money Talk 1010 AM. In the studio today, Kelly Anderson, co-founder of Florida Resource Management, dissecting the ultimate resume close in the PEO space. We've thrown a lot at our listeners here, and I think it's really all fitting. It really does. It's amazing how many value propositions are really just in one 2-minute sales pitch here. Or I know you don't want to call it salesy, but however you want to call it, right? You're trying to create so much value for, in some cases, as little as $50 a week.
Yeah.
And I don't know how, when you get through this example, how someone can't justify for as little as $50 a week getting all of this. So the next one you mentioned, HR manager.
Yeah. So HR managers, I think it's really tough to talk about that if we're talking about a 4-man family-based company. You, your brother, and 2 other brothers. It's really tough to talk about HR and put value behind that. But outside of that, if you have a growing company that might not necessarily need the complexity of compliance, at least initially, if there was a way to make sure that they knew that for the same cost of doing payroll, that you could apply or have an employee handbook that could follow you in the growth of your company. If they knew that hiring practices and the way that you hire somebody is you're in compliant and you don't have to worry about things like wage and hour. You don't have to worry about things like hiring and firing or wrongful termination. That if they knew that even at a 4-man level, as it's growing to 20 or 30, you've already got that baked in the cake. It's already there. You can rest assured that your employee handbook reads the way it's supposed to, and it covers the way that you hire and fire. And I think, again, 4-man drywaller is not going to listen to that. But I believe a 15-person towing company would listen.
Sure. Anybody that's, excuse me, having to administer a DOT program. But I think it's on the rise, Kelly. I really do. I think the great resignation is, the after effects are still being felt. And this was actually just a curveball I threw at Tim last week, kind of to kill some time in the last segment, if you will. And, how do you get these employees to come back? How every single business owner we're talking to is still talking about how they can't find anyone. They can't find people that want to work, which the funny money, the COVID money, it's all gone now. So I don't understand how the workforce hasn't come back. But the simple answer by Tim Russell last week was pay them more.
Yeah.
Right. And whether it's pay them more and the benefits are coming back, I really believe that's how we're going to get these people to come out of the woodwork. And although I don't necessarily agree with the legislation that passed in the last election cycle with putting minimum wage at 15 an hour, I think that's going to be a needle mover in the sense that if you can go to McDonald's and start at entry level at 15, then how can I be doing skilled trade for 13? You know what I mean? It's impossible. So if and when you start to bring in a better criteria of employees, then the base, the bennies, the handbooks, the HR compliance, I think, comes with it. I just think there's that mindset of, well, what's my PTO guidelines? What's my day off look like? I think it may actually creep into that 4-man drywall. I really do.
Yeah, the trades are coming back. I think if the trades come back, and people, the youth, find value in maybe not going to school right away and maybe picking up a trade, that maybe that is something that we're going to gain some employment from. But right now, the last 20 or 30 years, you graduate, you go to college, and if you don't, your parents shun you, and you got to get a degree, and then we learned that if you get a degree, it doesn't necessarily equal more pay. And so I think, fortunately, I think these trades are coming back, and these trade schools are enhancing their ability to train. And I think those positions should warrant more money. I think in some cases, more money is the answer. But in other cases, here's the thing that I feel today in today's youth. If today's youth just had a fraction of being a savage, just a fraction of it, they just go out and kill it, they could control everything. But today's youth is a little questionable in terms of how bad they want it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's savages out there.
They're still out there. And it's never been easier to make money. There's never been more opportunity out there. Just that little bit of tenacity and tenaciousness will go a long, long way. Well, coming back after the break, we're going to finish up the value props on the resume close. Stick around. All right. Last segment in the books. Thanks for sticking around today. All right. We are back. Everything PEO, Money Talk 10:10 a.m. In studio today, Kelly Anderson, co-founder of Florida Resource Management. I got to say co-founder because Kim Higgins, you're much better half. I like her a lot better. You're going to have to bring her in one of these days.
Yeah, I think she'd do well here. There's a lot of things that she would like to probably correct the way that I've said some things. She would love to monitor that.
I think that would just be a great show of, talk about a salt and pepper, a yin and a yang. You guys really complement each other well, kind of like my brother and I. We are complete opposites, but yet we stay in our lanes. It works out pretty darn good. So we've been taking the second segment to go through the resume close, right? A series of value propositions when trying to really bring the value of a PEO to the forefront of a business owner. We've gone through payroll manager, tax manager, having an insurance agent specialist at your fingertips, HR manager, safety, compliance, wage and hour, almost every regulation under the book, right? If it's employee driven, it's included in the PEO space. I know you kind of had tickled about having a health agent. Now, I know it's funny, Kelly, because I've had several guests on this show that position the PEO space complete opposite of you and I, right? I'm more of a distress comp specialist, but you can angle the PEO space in a lot of ways. You can angle it through benefits, through workers' comp, like I just mentioned, obviously through the payroll component. In my 20 plus years, I've literally only written group health at the time of enrollment 2 times. Of course, both cases were with you coincidentally, but in that sense of, I think every health agent that I come across in the field, they're just frothing. They're instantly thinking, oh my God, Evan has nothing but groups all over the place. What a great partnership this could be. What do you, when you're actually getting your business, you're doing the onboarding, how much are you really talking about it, going down these paths, so to speak?
Not much, but all we have to talk about is the truth. The truth is it's wildly unaffordable. And what are you budgeting for this? Because if you don't have a budget in mind, quoting and the expectation is going to end up, angering you. And fortunately, if you are budgeting for it and employee benefits is something that you're going to gravitate towards, then also keep in mind that as much as it might be uncomfortable today, it's going to that uncomfortability is going to increase over years because the rates are going to increase. And so that truth, to be able to talk to a client in a non-agent environment, because agents don't talk that way.
Right.
Agents talk about the benefit structure of a plan. They talk about deductibles. They talk about, changing the plan so it fits within the employment pool. We just talk about the truth. Wildly unaffordable, but we're happy to help you. And we're happy to go through the exercise. And we're happy to go down the rabbit hole with you. And we're happy to put 30 quotes in front of you. But let's just start from, this is really, really unaffordable. And that, to me, Evan, sets the deck, because now they know, okay, I'm getting some straight talk here. This guy's got nothing to gain. I don't profit from this. Florida Resource Management is a not-for-profit product deliverable when it comes to health insurance. We're not agents. We don't get paid that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we administer everything. We do the deductions. We do the setup, but unfortunately, we don't get paid on it. So I think it keeps Kim and I and our whole staff to be able to just hit it straight. And I think customers, they take advantage of that and they appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And the 30 quotes is really hitting the nail on the head. When we get asked to shop it here at PEO Advisors, and kind of how we've taught our staff, the very first qualifying question is, when did you get that policy? Because if it's been in the last 2 years, you went to 3 or 4 agents, the 30 quotes showed up, and you made a very educated decision on what the best plan was for your group at that time. So unless you've renewed yourself 6, 7 times, where every renewal they inch up the rates a little bit more and a little bit more, you haven't even priced yourself out of what that very best option was for you just a year ago. And so we really manage the deductions and take over that all the time. But that talk track, oftentimes the realization, kind of like you say, just being straight with them. Okay, yeah, we'll ride it out for another year or 2. It's rare. I started out doing nothing but health censuses, left, right, up, down, and no one ever moved forward And then you kind of educate yourself on this process just a little bit. They just want to hear, do you have a cheaper alternative? And when they find out you don't, okay, well, we'll just have to ride it out.
Yep. There's so many agents out there that aren't, I think they're a little tongue tied. They really can't say the things that a non-agent can say. They can't really say like, hey, look, this is all pretty much blanket pricing across the board. There's some variances there. Yeah. For the most part, you're going to come in probably within 5 to 7% of the next guy. So, that is something that I'll also lead with is, where's your agent today? I'm happy to do this quote for you. I'm happy to get my agents involved. I'm happy to do that. But where's your agent today? What's going on? What has he or she not done? Or have you abandoned that plan? Or is there a reason why you're not talking to him? Because that's the other thing PEOs don't want to do. PEOs are not interested in pissing people off. We're not interested in angering agents. We're not interested in, taking business from people. That's not what we're interested in doing. So I think, from the HR component, getting the health insurance as part of the package is something we owe our clients. I don't want to run from it, but at the same time, talking straight seems to be something they can appreciate.
Yeah, no, it's fair. And several of the PEOs that I have the most traction with don't have that master quote unquote health plan or these ultra competitive 401k plans. I mean, of course, we can line it up for you. I think that was the PEOs in the 80s. I really think, even for the ones that do have master health plans, and nothing will, as you say, piss a client off more than, well, thanks for the standard census, but if you do an individualized health questionnaire on every employee and have each one of them fill out these 5 pages, then I can get you a more attractive offer. And and you do that with 2 or 3 PEOs and they all have their own individualized health questionnaires, and then it's soup to can, nothing's changed, nothing's better. So
we can get you a better rate, but your deductible is 3 times the amount.
It's guaranteed issue, but you disclosed all the medications you're on, and unfortunately 2 of them are hurting you.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. We try not to get on that path too much, but I think the biggest part of the resume close is claims management. And I know I kind of threw that on after you had done your spiel, but and like I said, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a whole show on this topic. I hate to bore people, but it's the biggest value prop in the PEO space. If you're a business owner hearing this show and you're looking or considering taking on a PEO for the very first time, this is the part you really need to listen to.
Yeah. So at FRM, we do something a little different. Speaking of that resume close, is our safety management influence is really something called a safety system. The safety system is different from just being compliant in a safety manager's hat. It's about engaging in a process whereby the employer is embedded into a system, and that system tracks and allocates how much time is needed on the topics that are negligible. And if you don't have a good tracking record for that, if you don't have the ability to track how in some topics you as an employer are doing very well and in other topics you're not, it's really hard to steer that ship. It's really hard to manage from a place where you don't know the influence or the impact that you're making. So a safety system service is, I think, different than just having a safety consultant. And currently we're using a product called OSHAfy. And OSHAfy, the phrase OSHAfy is just a curtail from OSHA, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's using all the complexities of OSHA and then applying that in a safety system so the employer can feel like, hey, I'm following OSHA guidelines without having to tip my hat to OSHA. Because OSHA will tell you, I can come out and survey your company and find out if you're compliant, but not one employer feels good about that.
Oh no! And now you're on the radar.
So that they'll offer it, but you're now in the database.
Yeah.
And so OSHAfy is a product that we use, and it allows the independence of a person's or a company's negligence to be qualified, quantified, fixed, mitigated, challenged, all that stuff without them feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get fined.
Yeah.
So
and that's one thing I really love about FRM. Not to make this an infomercial on you folks, but you're included in the day-to-day operations, and a lot of PEO owners have stepped out. They've delegated these tasks, and believe it or not, there's even some PEOs out there that don't even have a risk manager.
Right.
They simply submit the case to the carrier. If the carrier approves it, that means we can write it.
Right.
With no discretion of marking up rates or pricing it according to trends or indemnity payouts or large reserves or all of the above, right? And so that's a slippery slope in itself. Another thing I don't see a lot of PEOs really doing is analyzing the loss runs almost on an indemnity payout level. I know that's a big hot button for FRM. If you see a ton of indemnity, which that's the wage reimbursement portion of the claim, one of your very first questions to the business owner is, what's going on? Do you not have light duty? Are you not promoting them to get back to work? I don't care if they're counting paper clips and pencils or stacking envelopes. There's a way to get them off your loss run and mine and get the indemnity shut down, right? To keep your rates competitive and costs in line. And very few PEOs, although every one of them has this in their service agreement, there's like literally zero enforcement except for FRM.
Yeah, we're kind of not policed that way. And it's a tough conversation. And clients oftentimes find it a little uncomfortable. But when they see what we're doing, when we can do the math exercise and they can see what's happening, that insurance companies, they're doing this to get the money back. And that reserve allocation is definitely tied to a percentage increase based on the indemnification process. If you remove the indemnification process, the multiplier on the reserve allocation cannot be submitted. Thus, it's dollar in, dollar out. So if the broken finger was $285 at the medical facility, then that's all it is. It's $285. It's not $285 plus a 400% reserve allocation. And so when they get that and they can see that in real time, they kind of have an aha moment. Like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that all I had to do was put Johnny back to work for 2 weeks in modified employment, and that all goes away. So it's helpful if they're willing to listen and they're willing to see it. Then they usually have no problem with it.
Well, I mean, you make them listen, and that's what I love about you, brother. But without education, I wouldn't know the first thing about hanging a set of windows on a high-story building. Right. So how can we expect these business owners to navigate the landscape of loss control without ever really, there's no class for this. When they go to contractor school and GC licenses are issued, they might have a paragraph or two and a broad stroke of minimum requirements and what that looks like, but not really the inner workings of it. Right. And it gets hairy. At the end of the day, even your losses then get developed by the carrier, which becomes another 30 to 50, 60% markup. I mean, with the premiums as low as they are, you would think that this, safety awareness, this true risk control would be on the forefront of every PEO.
Yep.
And it's still a shocker out there, but it's the game. PEOs are no different than any other businesses out there. Some of them are managed absolutely correctly, and some of them just so.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of that, you had a guest on a couple weeks ago. He's a wonderful, intelligent individual. His name's Tobin. And he was talking about return to light duty. He was talking about a claimant that has sought an attorney. And when they go to close the claim, in order to close that claim, you have to forfeit your job. And Tobin was talking about how to mitigate through that and be able to keep the good employees that otherwise get a lawsuit and then still get to keep their job. And that is another big outlier that business owners don't understand. When your employees go to litigate this claim, that they're going to have to forfeit their employment there. That's part of it. It's part of the settlement. And so that's part of the reason they're going to fight for more money, because their attorney is telling them, hey, Skip, you're going to have to terminate your position. So this isn't about your broken ankle. This is about your ability to make money when and if you terminate this because of a settlement. And that is a tough thing for a business owner to realize, that you're going to lose one of your key employees if this goes to a litigation. And oftentimes employees say, this is what I have insurance for. They have a right to get an attorney. Yep. And the insurance company has a right to terminate employment. And it's a shocker.
Yeah.
Most of them.
What an ultimate naiveness, right? To think that you're going to lawyer up
Right.
and still be able to be buddies with the business owner.
Right.
I mean, now lawyers are talking to lawyers.
Yep.
We are not allowed to buddy up any longer. We have to go down the path of legal correctness.
That's right.
And oh, by the way, I think if the first thing workers' comp attorney would say to a claimant that came under the case, "Hey, I'll take your case on, but do you know you have to lose your job?"
Yeah,
I bet a lot less of them would pony up.
for sure.
Especially the frivolous ones.
Right. But well, and maybe they wouldn't care because they'd go on to the next and they'd be the professional claimant we've talked about before. Maybe. But in those chances where somebody feels like, oh, it's my right to get an attorney. Well, it's an insurance right to make you lose your job. And it's statutory, it's the law. And unfortunately, if they knew that, I think less and less would happen.
Well, we got about a minute and a half before the show ends. I got to tell you, as the business owner in this example, if I heard that I could get a payroll manager, tax manager, insurance agent, HR manager, safety manager, health insurance specialist, and a claims management provider for as little as $50 a month, you had me at hello.
Yeah.
I mean, you did. So, well, thanks for doing another lap, my friend.
I'm so glad to be here and appreciate you making some time for me.
Yeah, no, it's the show appreciates you more than I could say, Kelly. Really, you've been an awesome contributor, always poking me with ideas and jabs, and I do appreciate it. So next week's kind of a weird show for us. We got a couple of maybes, a couple of cancellations. We may have a 3-panel call in. I may have someone calling in from Atlanta, New York, and possibly Scott Hansen with KHR in the building. So it will be a neat show with a little bit of variety for our listeners. So I do thank you so much. Everyone knows how this ends. Love God. Appreciate your PEO. Be kind to your staff. And know we're on a 167-hour break.
All right. That was it. Resume closing the building. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.